How's everyone doing today? It's your co-host Durbin with Synonyms of Sound.
And this is your second co-host, Tony. And I'm very excited to introduce William and Daniel, founder and co-founder of Bags. How's it going, guys?
What's going on? Happy to be here. Good to be on with you, fellas.
Absolute
All right.
pleasure. Absolute pleasure. I'm really excited for this episode. Learn more about the origin story here and what you guys are cooking up, actually.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So I want to first start off by saying congratulations on your most recent fundraising, $3 million. I think that's a huge number. But before jumping into that, tell us a little bit about yourselves. What got you into the space of creating the company Bags, or why did you think there was a need? But love to know the backstory before that. So tell us a little bit about you guys.
Cool. Well, we went to high school together, actually, right? So that's the OG origin. And so we've known each other for some time now.
All right, for those who don't know, who's Daniel, who's William? For our video audience.
Yeah.
I'm the Yankees cat. I tried to put the names down there in case they show up on the right side. I'm William.
All right, cool. So you guys went to high school together.
Yeah, that's the origin story. We went to high school together. Daniel was a year ahead of me, a little bit of a mentor figure
Awesome.
in those early years. And then, we split up, both went to college. I went down to Wake Forest University in North Carolina. And my path into tech entrepreneurship is not a typical one. I was an English literature major, writing, my thesis. I wrote my thesis in dystopian fiction. And when it came time to go out and enter the workforce, I didn't really know where I was going to go. So I got a job that I could get, and I started off in crisis management consulting. So working for major Fortune 500 companies on critical issues. It was really, a brand storytelling effort. But a lot of those things that we were working on were major mergers and acquisitions, really bad situations that were affecting brand reputation, crisis litigation, and it was super interesting work. I was exposed to the C-suite of some of the biggest companies in the world from a very early point in my career. But really, I had a desire to get more creative and drive more impact the whole time. So ultimately, I went over to IPG, which is one of the big four marketing holding companies, and built a capability within their largest media agency. And that capability was to help brands make film and television projects that were entertainment instead of advertising. So I became a film producer, but a film producer with job security at one of the biggest companies in the world, Fortune 100. So it was a little safer. That went well enough that ultimately I was tapped to work with the chief content officer and build of the holding company and build a net new film and television production company for IPG called Traverse 32. And a couple of experiences just pointed me in the direction of trying to do something more direct to affect change in the storytelling ecosystem, which was namely that whenever a project was coming down the pipeline, we built some marketplace technology that would take a brand and a top Hollywood director and compare the affinity of their audiences to know whether they were a good fit to create content.
That's interesting.
I would see a lot of people come to the table for the deals, and there was always a lot of intention behind who came to the table and to really get a diverse range of voices in. But across Hollywood, I saw more and more that the folks who ended up walking away with the deal were people who looked a lot like me. The decision makers who determined what stories got told were folks that looked a lot like me. And that doesn't reflect the culture that we aspire to. It doesn't reflect the society that we're a part of. And so I really started thinking about ways that I could shake things up and make change in the creative industry specifically, to make sure that people who are growing up anywhere in the country that have a story to tell have the opportunity to tell that story to a major audience. And that set me down a path of developing my own film and television production model. The first person I called was my friend Daniel. And we began looking into that right in 2020. So the day we were ready to sort of launch off and start to test that project, the pandemic struck. no one's going to shoot any film and television. And during a global pandemic, the lockdown started. So that project went to the table. Unfortunately, was still working in a day job at that point. And a few months later, we got started in earnest, but I'll let Daniel jump in and give some background.
Yeah. So that company William referenced was Please Don't Touch the Art. My quick 2 cents and background, went to Brown. Following Brown, I actually played soccer professionally overseas. So I played in Sweden and Greece.
Nice.
The biggest thing that gave really was time, right? I come from a background where I, played soccer in college. It was just like do my work, socialize, play soccer. That was my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to start a couple of businesses in college and didn't necessarily get anywhere besides an events company here and there. And then while I was playing, I had time. And so I ended up actually starting 2 companies, a sports agency and a tech company. The sports agency has been around for the last 8 years now. And the tech company was called Ask Tipster. We started off in the fashion technology space, building tools to help connect regular people to professional styling virtually. And then we pivoted to help brands connect with customers, and essentially, through different things like chat widgets and other types of tooling for the purpose of conversion.
Cool. And I saw you sold that successfully in 2019.
Yeah, so I sold that in 2019 to Flowcode, which is a QR code media company started by Tim Armstrong. For those who don't know Tim was one of the early hires at Google. Ran Google partnerships for quite some time, ended up taking over AOL, did the Yahoo AOL merger, went to Verizon, Oath. So he's one of these OG tech guys. And we were really fortunate to, 1, sell a business to him, but 2, build a really good relationship with him. Because the reality is it's kind of a club, right? Tim's in the club and everyone else is trying to get in there. And but he from that has been a huge asset for us. But so I spent a year building out the product and growth teams. And then, honestly following that, and William and I actually, we were working on Please Don't Touch the Art in our spare time. COVID hit. Then, May 2020, following the murder of George Floyd, I think it was a point of reflection for me as a Black entrepreneur who had the opportunity, honestly, and the privilege to go down the entrepreneurial path. And how in reality, I think about myself, there's actually a ton of incredible entrepreneurs that exist all throughout the US and beyond who look like me, who might not have that same level of access. And access actually is the determining factor of their potential starting even, and success forward. And so, William and I literally would protest all the day. He would do his day job at night. And then in the middle of the night, we started working on ideas, right? Of just what could we do? What could we build? And I spoke to a mentor of mine, a guy named Damian Duane, a Black man who's built an incredible investment business. And I was like, hey, I want to raise a fund. And he was just like, listen, man, you don't know the investment world. What you know is how to build tools that connect people to things online. Just do that, right? Be part of the solve of the problem, but come at it from the angle of tech. Right. And so,
that's smart.
From that moment for us, it was just why don't we should build some type of tech to help people get access to money. That's it. Right. Get access to financing so that, essentially they can grow their business, hire more people in their communities, build their own equity and generate more. Right.
Got it.
And so we started off there, and just, honestly, we started to just do it, connect people to dollars, right? We used all our relationships and, made those introductions to investors and lenders. And, we came to find that the vast majority of the businesses we spoke to, in reality, were great businesses that weren't necessarily a fit for venture, but in reality, we're growing and needed capital.
Got it.
Toss it to you from talk a little bit more about that.
What would you guys say was the
Sorry,
what would you guys say was the hardest part about that process? just getting organized and I guess creating the pipeline of businesses to present to some of your network as like viable, like, opportunities?
I mean, it was so interesting. Like when we first started, we kept hearing all right, like where are the businesses? Where are the opportunities, right? Investors are literally, I was getting on the phone with VCs going, hey, like, can you intro me to good founders? Like, I don't have that pipeline. Are they out there? And honestly, for us, it wasn't that hard, right? Like it literally was, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what this is what our end goal is. Do you know a Black, otherwise diverse or women-owned, or Black or otherwise diverse founder who needs help, who needs financing, who needs connections, relationships? And the intro just started pouring in.
Got it. The hardest thing for us was, it's the same thing today. It's time. Like that's the most valuable resource we're ever going to have. And when there's a social justice movement that we care deeply about and want to be involved in immediately, and also we have this long-term vision towards how we can actually affect something that's tangibly making a difference, juggling against what we need in order to meet our basic needs as humans, and we choose to live in New York, which is a privilege in itself. Making sure that we had the time to actually execute on everything we needed was the challenge. The rest of it sort of fell into place when we just started looking earnestly.
Got it. So how did you guys come up with the name Bags? What's the origin story of the name? Because it was really interesting. I like Bags. I'm like, all right, I could see how they could play in the hip hop culture. Let's go get that bag. But let me hear, where did the name come from for you guys?
We wanted Bags for a long time. Bags is actually relatively new. It was a rebrand that we went through. Originally, when we didn't even know what the business was going to be, we had a name. That name was AMP. You two are probably familiar with that name as being part of a new Clubhouse-esque business that was recently launched by Amazon, which wouldn't have been convenient for our search engine optimization. But as we went through the process, something became very clear to us, and that was we do one thing really well. We help entrepreneurs get capital, and we needed a name that was going to convey that. And we were sitting with one of our advisors one night over Thai food. And we were talking about, like, we need a rebrand. We know this thing with the same names coming down the pipeline. Our name doesn't, and AMP was a reference to an old Toni Morrison quote where she said, we don't need any more writers as solitary heroes. We need a heroic writers movement, assertive, militant, pugnacious. So it was an acronym. It was those three values: assertive, militant, pugnacious is what we wanted to see from the movement for productive change. But it wasn't as directly relevant to our day-to-day. And we were throwing things back and forth. It's like cabbage, no, that already exists. Lettuce, no, it's like kind of confusing. And then Daniel just sort of said, what about Bags?
And to be honest, that came from, we were a year ago now, coming up upon a year. My mother went on a girls' trip. Right, with a few of her friends.
Hopefully, it's not like the movies girl trip.
The group. No. A little bit different. The next thing we know, in the family group chat, my mom's like screaming, like, "Yo, like, let's get that bag! Like I want more bags!" Like, and we're like, "What are you saying? Who did you speak to?" Right, like, Mom, like, it's 61. What are we talking about? And that Christmas, I ended up getting my mom a shirt that literally said like more bags on the shirt. And so like, that's why it was kind of in my head. And then honestly, when we were talking about it, we were like, oh, like, wouldn't it be funny if we called it like Bags, like, secure the bag? Like, and honestly, I went online and I saw the domain securebags.com and I was like, oh wait, this is it. Like, this could work. This could work for SEO. It fits. Like, let's go. And
I
to
like
be
it.
clear,
I love the name. And it makes sense.
It works. It's just it's not like. But to be clear, like, we're not your classic fintech company. Like, we're not, like, that's the whole point, right? We want to bring culture into the center of everything we do.
And I think that connects back to, like, everyone's saying, where are these businesses? Well, everyone wants to talk to the businesses that we get to talk to every day, and we're we're blessed to do that. But the reality is that we know how to meet them where they're at in a way that they understand with what they need. And that's what it takes to earn trust. And trust is the core variable for our entire success.
Awesome. And in terms of the raise,
yep.
How I guess how actively were you guys finding opportunities for your customers before that happened?
Pretty actively, right? Like honestly, it started. We essentially started operating under this model, which is connecting businesses to different types of lenders, but primarily equitable lenders, about a year ago. And it started with one business, a company called BAO. And, essentially they had purchase orders from a large retailer. And we connected them with, a behavior-based loan to get them some inventory financing, and boom, that changed their, $5,000-$10,000 a month to getting, $50,000 worth of purchase orders filled. Right. And so that's kind of the model that started it all. And, we essentially got sort of the first few reps under our belt, and we're kind of doing 1 to 2 businesses a month, 3 to 4 businesses a month, 10, 20, and so on. And as that trend line started to increase, that was when we kind of realized, okay, it's that time to go out and try to find the right investors to back what we're doing. And we'd raised about $1 million to that point from different types of angel investors. But for us to really, really take a shot into building what we needed to build to do this at scale, which is always our dream, we needed some real fuel.
Gotcha. And I think you guys raised a total about $5 million in total with everything, from a couple articles I read online.
So total $4 million.
Got it.
$1 million in pre-seed capital, $3 million in seed capital. Listen, the raise itself was, we could get on here and be like, hey, it was easy and it was great, this and that. But to be honest, and any founder who tells you that probably isn't necessarily telling you the truth, because it's a grind, right? We started raising money last March, right? We didn't get first check in until May, and we closed in October, right?
Got it.
End of September. And so, we were
Definitely is a rigor.
You know what I mean? So that was the hustle. That was, 60 initial meetings, right? 40 follow-up meetings, right? Due diligence with a couple dozen different VCs, right? It's I've been doing that full time for a little while, but I think what we found is, we've managed to connect with investors who really at our core, before we walked into the building, believe in the problem and solving the problem that we're talking about, right? Either they've experienced it firsthand, or they know people who have, and they really see it as an incredible opportunity. Because I think small businesses in reality, the largest, most underserved, sort of asset class of business in the U.S., right? That's also growing at a tremendous rate, right? You're talking across diverse women-owned businesses. That's 20 million businesses right there. 4 million employers.
Yeah,
right? That's a really
so I was looking at an interesting article based on what you're just saying. So 9.2 million minority-owned small businesses. There are 11.7 women-owned small businesses in the U.S. And what's interesting, these segments are still rapidly growing, but the interesting part is that 99% of those businesses will never raise venture capital or get access to that, which I thought was really crazy. There's so many of them, but why wouldn't they do that? So any thoughts about that would be interesting.
Yeah, the reality is that not every business wants to be a venture capital scale business. Or needs to be. When venture capital is looking at something, they're trying to get a significant multiple on their investment back at some point, and that means they're investing in a company that they think is going to get acquired for hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars. $100 million is actually probably considered a loss for a Series A venture capital investor. So if building your business to $100 million valuation isn't good enough, how many people are actually setting out to say, I want to own my own restaurant. I'm going to open a barber shop. I'm going to start an apparel brand, and think that they're going to generate that, because particularly in like consumer goods, Main Street businesses, venture capital isn't designed to work for them. The problem is that since venture capital is so hot in like the cultural zeitgeist, everyone thinks of it as top of mind when it wasn't really the right fit in the first place.
Got it. So how do you help them get access to funds?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, you know, we did the work from the get-go, really trying to go out and, one, find the dollars that are actually meant to help solve this problem, right? Like dollars that are meant to be lent to diverse and limited-owned businesses, specifically small businesses. And so, you know, we realized that there are these financial institutions called CDFIs, Community Development Financial Institution. Like, honestly, I didn't know a CDFI existed until, you know, a few years ago, right? So, and essentially what they're meant to do, they're nonprofit lenders who, because they're nonprofits and they get their money from the SBA, larger banks, and other institutions, like they can afford to deploy, receive, and redeploy at rates that are actually pretty low compared to market, right? You know, in reality, that's the most affordable way for you to get a small business loan in America. But the problem is that one, most people don't really necessarily know they exist. And two, what we found is, you know, like the criteria for applying to these different products is like hard to find. And then three, like it's a bit of a Google problem, to be honest, right? Like when you go on Google and you search small business loan, you're going to see all these options that in reality have nothing to do with your business, where your business is at, how much revenue you have, right? Your credit score, like all these other factors, how many assets that are relevant to getting a loan aren't incorporated to your Google search, right? So you're seeing options, and what's happening is most people are just going and applying to different products. And to be clear, like we're getting denied at higher rates than, you know, honestly, our white counterparts. And so what we realize is, okay, well, the reality is there's options that exist out there. We just got to make sure that they're truly discoverable. We understand really what it means to be a good candidate for that lender. And then we're going to work with each business in our product to essentially make sure that they're only applying the things that they actually have a high percentage chance of being approved for. Because like honestly, like time is everything, right? Small businesses, they don't have a lot of time and not a lot of money. Like we can at least give them a little bit of time back so that they can get more money.
Got it.
Nice. I'd imagine just with some of the numbers you guys mentioned about the meetings and connecting with various different VCs, looking for the right investor. When you guys found that batch of like who you felt was the right folks, what was that pitch like? Or like, was there someone that you met and it was like, holy shit, we're pitching to this person, like this would be the perfect investor for us, and like how did that go?
So our lead, they're a firm based in Los Angeles called Slauson & Co. Founded by Austin and AJ, and they're interesting from the get-go because Austin's background comes from traditional venture capital. AJ's background comes from entertainment, and he's an entrepreneur himself, right? He's got a business with Issa Rae, for example. And so, you know, when we sat down and had our first meeting with them, like, you know, they did the classic VC, okay, tell us about yourself, X, Y, and Z. And then I could tell they kind of looked at each other like, well, like, this is interesting because the core thesis of why and how we started was shared in their core thesis around why and how they started as a firm, right? And then honestly, I went out to LA a couple weeks later to sit down with them in person. And we talked about the intricacies of our business, but to be real, like we just like shot the shit with them. Like we just like it was as if sitting down with two homies and just like really diving deep into the problems at hand. And it felt like it was less so of a pitch and more so of a conversation around what's the right type of solution and how could we better our hypothesis in solving that, right? So we knew immediately that we were like, we're talking to the right people here because we're not having to convince them that like diverse small businesses
there's a need for our business
needing funding, right? Like, and to be clear, a bunch of the people we spoke to couldn't really wrap their heads around that as a problem, right? And so like that's how far we needed to go in terms of who we spoke to and who we did.
That makes sense. So
and
beyond
how
getting
much is,
people access to money,
sorry.
Beyond getting people access to money, do you
There's like a
continue
lag.
to follow their path or their journey onwards? Like, I feel it's one thing to get the money, but how do you ensure that they're successful afterwards?
So that's exactly what differentiates us from people who have done, a loan origination model in the past. Like there's plenty of companies out there that'll help you find a loan, but they're driven solely by, they want to make as much money as possible on the origination. And they're handing an entrepreneur a loan and saying, okay, have fun with it. See you next time, whatever that is. We actually are very intentional about how we support entrepreneurs through the whole funding cycle of the lifetime of their business. An entrepreneur doesn't just need to figure out how to get capital now. They need to get capital now and know where their next capital injection is going to come from. And probably the one after that too. So one thing we're building now is a debt management product. So entrepreneurs can view all the loans, their business credit cards all in one place, pay them down as efficiently as possible to save money, and then refinance when they're eligible with automated alerts. And that's going to change the whole game. So an entrepreneur that's working with us will know that they're taken care of as long as they keep running their day-to-day business. They'll know where they can get that funding. And that's the difference maker, because I met an entrepreneur a couple of days ago who got 2 loans from CDFIs, one of like 4% of the entrepreneurs we meet with who know about CDFIs in advance. And there were amazing loans on good terms, but then during the pandemic ended up getting stuck with a predatory loan that hit her with like 60% interest. And it almost put her out of business. She had to take out a lien on her house in order to keep her business alive. And that's the type of thing that we absolutely want to avoid. That should never happen to a small business owner in this country. And she's super psyched about what we're building for that reason.
Cool. That's awesome. That kind of leads into what I was about to ask next. How much have you guys scaled team wise and invested in engineering and technology, and I guess the overall experience of applying and using eventual products like that?
Of course, yeah. So we started. It was William and I and a couple others, and now we're 11 people. We definitely went down an interesting path in terms of growth from a personnel perspective. We actually brought on a third co-founder a year ago. His name's Ignacio Semerene, shout out Iggy, which has been an incredible catalyst in our own growth. He spent the last 5 years at Monzo, which is a neobank in the UK. So he knows how to build incredible products as well as to scale a fintech business into becoming a unicorn. It started with Ignacio, and then from there, the big transition was from outsourced development team to internal resources, internal engineers, and we got a few on our team now, which is great. And really, that's where we're going to continue to staff up and make sure that we find both the individuals that can do great work, but fit our culture, right? This is the third business I've started, and in reality, we actually want to build something that people actually want to come to work and enjoy every single day, right? Life is more than just work, even though we're going to work pretty damn hard. We recognize that people have aspirations, and in reality, this is not going to be their last job working for us, right? We want to see them grow and be successful. So the team growth thing is honestly top of mind. And from my perspective, that's actually what makes or breaks successful companies, right?
I've cultivated a lot of startup advice in the last couple of years here. But one of the most important things is, if you want your business to be successful, convince the smartest people to come work with you. And I felt like I had that with Daniel. I felt like I had that double when Ignacio joined. And now with folks like Brandon Kroll leading our tech stack, Christina Espinal leading our customer acquisition and retention. We are in a position where I come to work every day. I never feel like the smartest person in the room. And that's a really good sign for a founder.
Awesome. No, that's great advice. What I was actually about to ask next is, I'm myself, I'm on the side, outside of the podcast, and I'm working on a project, and what I want to kind of understand a bit better is, when you get to that point and it's like time to scale and think about growing the team, or I guess the question is, how do you identify that point? Does that come after funding, after raising? Does that come after you've generated like substantial revenue and maybe you're not even like exploring funding and just need to scale to cover things, people wearing many hats? Like, I guess I guess it varies based off the business, but how would you guys describe like that moment when you're like, all right, we need to expand because this is getting a lot?
Yeah, we get that. Revenue.
Yeah, well, so look, I think that the most important thing is something that falls under this bucket that is proof of concept. You need to know that you're going to be able to make money to pay those people. Like there's no experience you want to go through where you make a bunch of strategic hires and you're really pumped about it, and then the business needs to pivot and the model changes and people become redundant or they don't fill a need that the business currently has anymore. So, a fundraise can be a great time to go out and hire, but a lot of startups make the mistake of over hiring, where a team of 5 really focused people can do the same job as a team of 12 when the mission matters. So I think the decision really comes down to like, is there product market fit? So, people want what you have. Do you need people in order to fulfill demand that exists? And from a lending standpoint, it's interesting to note, like most lenders want to see a use of funds that's different from key hires because key hires don't translate directly to revenue generation. So if it's money for marketing, that's easier to stomach if you're a lender than a key hire, because the key hire, there's no guarantee that that'll translate into more money in the business, a higher likelihood that loan will get paid back, where marketing feels more likely to do that. But Daniel, I'm sure, has more thoughts than I do even.
Yeah, I think when in doubt, right, like if you want to show that you're growing, meaning you need to be growing from a revenue perspective, more demand than you can service, like in a very, very simple way, is a great time to think about growing from a personnel perspective, a great time to think about growing with additional capital or without, right? Like the way we think about money, like bringing money into a business is like, if you can maximize revenue, that's stage number 1, right? If
the best way to raise money.
Best way, right? Like hire the team, if that contributes to growth and revenue, awesome. Next is debt. After that, right? The next is giving up equity in the business. And the next after that should be grants and everything else, right? And so as you're thinking about growing your business and your project, it's like, one, and also to be clear, I think part of it is, especially for early stage stuff, right? Like everyone's going to come to the table and negotiate as big of a salary as you want, as they can, right? Like keep it as lean as possible and make sure that you got the right people around the table. And the real question for yourself is, if there's no money in the account tomorrow, who's going to say, all right, like we're going to figure it out, right? Like that's really what it comes down to, is like when the dust settles and every single person's just there because they're getting that check, all right, fine. But like in reality, right, like building anything, whether it's a startup or another business, it's all about finding the right team which really believes in what you're going to accomplish, incentivizing them long term. And then as you're thinking about that growth point, it's like, as soon as you're getting more calls than you can answer, that's really good.
Awesome. I'm sure our listeners who are also either entrepreneurs now or aspiring entrepreneurs would appreciate that deep dive there. So, I did, most definitely. Thanks for that.
So what would you say are your target?
About what you're working on. Are you allowed to blur the waters?
I'm sorry?
Are you allowed to blur the lines? Can you tell us what you're up to?
So I won't get into too much details, but it's in the Web3 space. I am working with a small team. We're essentially building a DAO right now to essentially incentivize group economics on the blockchain for the underrepresented community and hopefully incubate initiatives that will tackle the wealth gap here, for starters, in America. We're exploring NFTs and things of those sorts. We're working on launching a collection, and essentially the reason why we're going the NFT route initially is because I also feel that that's like an alternative way to organically build a community and raising. But the NFT collection will dual as a membership to the DAO as well, and the rarities in the collection will be based off of historical figures from the Afro-Latin diaspora. But like art-wise, seen through a futuristic lens.
Right,
The DAO's called Diaspora.
I love it.
Yeah.
So a quick anecdote there, because we're not going to dive too deep into the Web3 and NFT space, so I wrote the first white paper in 2017 about the applications of blockchain in sports. I did an ICO in fall 2017 into early 2018. Gave all the money back. Built the first NFT marketplace that was approved by the App Store. I did a lot of work in that space, so we're going to talk offline. I understand the intricacies of trying to build a business in that space.
That's so cool.
And I was super early, to be honest. That was my failure as a founder. We ran out of cash at the beginning of 2019. And we had partnerships with everybody, but it's just a matter of saying, all right, I was right about a lot of things, but it's great to see other brothers like yourself who are building great things in the space now, because it's definitely come a long way.
Awesome. Dope to hear that. It's exciting. I didn't know that. That's dope to hear.
That's why we got to bring us together so you can just, network, leverage each other's knowledge. I think that's important. But since we're
makes it all worth it, right?
yeah, very true. But since we were talking about bags, is there a particular customer that you're more inclined to partner or work with? Are you more on the retail side? Are you looking for people within tech? What does a typical customer look like that you're ideally targeting? And what does a small business consider? Small business can mean many different things. Is there a particular number, revenue target? A little bit more about that.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of different ways that we can answer this question because small business is a super broad category. And what's interesting is an early stage startup is a small business maybe for years before they cross the line into something else. A creative project like a film is a small business because they get an LLC to put it together. Visual artists are creating their own companies to sell what they do. Anything can really be in that small business category. But what we're really focusing on is aspiring startups in the consumer space that'll probably be in the small business category for the first while, and then pure play small businesses. So brick and mortars, solopreneurs selling a product, doing it online. We will say we'll work with anybody, but in order to be ready to get a loan, you want to have a product that already exists. You want to have some sales. You want to be selling it. You want to have some traction, get that positive cash flow going. And so I think that a really good target for an entrepreneur is see if you can do $100,000 in sales in a year. And if you're able to do that, you're probably a good candidate to get a cash injection in order to grow that.
All right. So I have someone for you guys. Her name is Genesis, and she owns a company called Lorenzo Frozen Puddings. She just got this big deal with Walgreens, and she's looking to raise some capital. We just had her on a podcast. The episode is out, so you can check it out if you like. But she's doing big things.
Just our last guest. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. And send samples because that sounds good to me.
Yeah, we definitely will.
That's why I was saying the same thing.
So, what is the evolution for you guys next? What's the next big step?
Yeah, so I think the next big step is Williams alluded to it earlier. We've shown that we can help get businesses funded, and now we want to start to solve, and dig a little bit deeper into the problem set. So, not only are we helping people get loans, it's how do you manage them? How do you think about refinancing them? How do you think about, really thinking about debt as a form of working capital and growth over time and making sense of all the financial jargon that exists within your business, right? We want to make it truly attainable and easy for people to discover and manage debt, right? So I think that's immediately on the forefront. The biggest thing, honestly, we're just laser focused every single day on getting more businesses funded, period, right? And because and honestly, it's part of why, I've loved building this business is because our KPI, our number one thing that we care about literally is the impact that we want to have, right? And so, we're just continuing to do that every single day. And, go from the few hundred businesses that we've helped thus far to, hopefully, thousands the next benchmark, and if, 10,000s after that. And, again, there's 20 million businesses out there who need what we're offering. And, we want to make sure that, we're readily available, we're truly accessible, and our product works in the best way possible to help them meet their goals.
Awesome.
So when y'all are, working through your day to day, perfecting the craft or just working through business challenges and things of those sorts, how do you block out the noise, right? Like, how do you stay focused, stay locked in when you were going through that period of engaging with, VCs, investors, angels, and all that, and getting all those no's before the yes finally? Like, I guess, how did you guys stay focused on the task at hand, block out any like sorts of negativity and distractions? I guess, what's your method of, like I mentioned, blocking out the noise, so to speak? And both of you probably have different answers, I'd imagine.
Like this time around for me is different than previous because, I've know what to expect, right? Like, built a business, sold a business, built a business, shut a business down, now building another business, right? Like, and the realities of, starting any company, specifically a tech company, when you're taking a lot of risk and there's a lot of unknowns and you're trying to redefine or just purely recreate, is that there are going to be more bad days than good, right? Like, that's just it. And I remember when I started my first business, it took me a little while to reconcile with that, right? Like, honestly, lost a lot of sleep, right? Like, pulled out some hair, like, did the whole thing. And I eventually found that, like, actually those are the moments where you really learn stuff, right? Like, every time a launch doesn't go that well, you run a marketing test and, like, the data sucks. Like, there's learning in some of those sort of what would be seen as failures. And so for me, like, and also to be clear, like, I'm an optimist in my core, right? Like, it kind of gets me up every single day. I love the risk. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, my strategy for it, I mean, William and I both, like, stay super active, right? Like, I'm on the field, I'm in the gym, I'm cycling, right? Like, that's my headspace of release. But yeah, you kind of have to, especially when you're doing the venture process, right? Like we ended up raising from four different funds, four different funds. And in reality, like, it took 60 plus meetings. It's a lot of no's, but through every single one of those no's, one, we were able to establish a relationship. Two, like, I really appreciated those who said why, right? Because in every why, we're trying to understand, okay, well, maybe it's a perspective on the market that we don't know, that we should. Maybe we're just not a fit, and that's okay. But then a lot of them actually gave us really constructive feedback on, like, hey, like, here's ways to think about your model that if you hit this, like, then we're back, right? So, and honestly, like, I use every no as like all right, I'm gonna I'm gonna show you, right?
Next time.
Like, this way. Yeah, like, you gotta listen. All founders, we all have to have a little element of blind confidence. If we don't, we won't get through it.
True.
I'm gonna answer this one differently so that we're shaking up. Although I concur with everything Daniel's saying. I think blocking out the noise for me, it's one of our core values. It's community, which means, like, community at work and out of work. And it means, to me, like, a community is a group of people that you show up in service to without feeling an obligation or expecting a reward. Like, I choose to show up for my community, and that happens in the office, the workplace, the entrepreneurs we work with. But it also means that at a certain point, like, I gotta, like, put my laptop down and get on the phone with my mom. And, like, I gotta go out and catch up with people. And I gotta go out and see, like, where people around me can benefit from just, like, me being a human and not a professional. And on top of community, it's like, I got to trust in the team to take care of things. There's like an old maxim that says, if you want something done right, do it yourself. Well, that comes from a perfectionist state of mind. And I'm a perfectionist, but what I have to do is cultivate trust in the people around me to show up and take care of things, which gives me the room to continue living life and know that like I can have a hobby and I can take care of that hobby. I can have friends and I can show up for my friends and my family. And at the end of the day, like I can find a calm place to sit down and meditate and like reflect on my day and be happy no matter if it was a good work day or a bad work day. And I'm talking meditation. Like I'm not talking about like what like you see in movies or like that like the versions of meditation that have proliferated through society. I'm talking about like sitting still and thinking about what my big toe looks like, because I want to be so in the present moment and connected to my physical being that I don't even know where I'm at in the world. So off in the clouds, off into the distance, and I just got to get back there. And when I do, I always feel good. And every day's a good day with that attitude.
Awesome, man.
I agree. I definitely agree. Awesome.
All right. So thank you so much for coming in the show. I feel like you guys gave us some really good gems. I guess one last gem in general for people that are going to potentially go through the process of looking for a loan or money in general. What is one thing that you want them to be mindful of that they don't fall down the wrong trap or make a mistake? Like what's one thing you think they should be mindful of?
Yeah, well, the one thing to be mindful of is that you'll find the best options if you go to securebags.com.
I love
it works. That's for sure. But also like it's important to know that, you know, there is good debt in the world. It exists. There's a lot of bad actors in the space. And so being smart, diligent, making sure you're keeping up with your books, making sure your financials are in order, that you're as prepared as possible. And then make sure you use trust and connections. Look for people who want to put money into the community and rely on them instead of going places and just like and feeling like you have to get desperate, because you never do. There's always going to be an answer if you know where to look for it. And then again, you can look for it on securebags.com.
I love it. Awesome, man.